The crack of a rifle shot split the dawn air over Camp Verde, Arizona, in the spring of 1878, sending birds scattering from the cottonwood trees along the Verde River. Bridget Ellis ducked instinctively, her heart pounding against her ribs as another shot followed, closer this time. She had arrived in the frontier town just 3 days earlier with dreams of making a new life for herself, not expecting to be caught in the crossfire of what sounded like a gunfight before she'd even settled in. "Get down, madam," a deep voice called from somewhere behind her. Bridget whirled around to see a tall man with a weathered face gesturing urgently from the doorway of the general store. Another shot rang out, and the wooden post near her head splintered. Without thinking, she gathered her skirts and ran toward the stranger, but her foot caught on an uneven plank in the boardwalk. She pitched forward with a cry, tumbling down the steep embankment that led from the town's main street toward the river below. The fall seemed to last forever. Bridget felt herself rolling, bouncing against rocks and scrub brush. A searing pain exploded in her side when she struck something solid, perhaps a boulder or a fallen tree trunk, and she couldn't suppress a scream as she finally came to rest at the bottom of the ravine. The world spun around her as she tried to catch her breath, but each attempt sent waves of agony through her chest. Something was terribly wrong. She couldn't seem to draw enough air, and when she tried to move, the pain intensified to an unbearable level. Footsteps scrambled down the embankment toward her. Through tears of pain, Bridget saw the man from the general store kneeling beside her, his expression grave as he gently examined her. "Miss, can you hear me?" His voice was surprisingly gentle for such a rugged-looking man. His eyes were a startling blue beneath the brim of a dust-covered Stetson, and concern etched lines around them. "Yes," she managed to whisper, the single word sending fresh pain shooting through her torso. "My name's Cole Donovan. I'm going to help you, but I need to know where it hurts worst." "My side," Bridget gasped. "Can't breathe right." Cole's hands moved carefully along her ribs, his touch professional but tender. When his fingers pressed gently against her left side, Bridget cried out. "I'm sorry," he said immediately, withdrawing his hand. "I think you've broken some ribs in the fall. We need to get you to Doc Wilkins, but he's in his homestead outside of town. The shooting's got everyone taking cover, and there's no wagon available." Bridget tried to nod, but even that small movement sent fresh waves of pain through her body. She felt consciousness beginning to slip away. "Stay with me, miss," Cole urged, his voice seeming to come from far away. "What's your name, Bridget?" she whispered. "Bridget Ellis. Miss Ellis, I'm going to carry you to the doctor. It's going to hurt, and I apologize for that, but we need to move now." Before she could respond, Cole had slipped one arm under her knees and the other carefully behind her shoulders. With seemingly effortless strength, he lifted her from the ground. Despite his efforts to be gentle, the movement jarred her injured ribs, and Bridget couldn't suppress a whimper of pain. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "Try to stay still if you can." As Cole began to climb carefully back up the embankment, Bridget caught glimpses of the town above. The shooting had stopped, but people were still taking cover, peering cautiously from doorways and windows. No one seemed inclined to offer help. At the top of the embankment, Cole paused to catch his breath. Bridget could feel the steady beat of his heart against her shoulder, and despite the pain, she felt oddly safe in this stranger's arms. "The Doc's place is about 4 miles outside of town," Cole explained, his voice low. "I'd take you to the saloon or hotel, but with those ribs, you need proper medical care. Can you hold on that long?" Bridget managed a small nod, though she wasn't entirely sure she could. Each breath was agony, and she suspected that more than just her ribs had been damaged in the fall. "Who?" "Shooting?" she asked, the words coming in a painful gasp. Cattle rustlers, Cole replied grimly. They've been hitting the ranches around here for months. Looks like they decided to raid the bank today, but the sheriff was waiting for them. 2 of them are dead, one's wounded and captured, and the last one got away. He began walking, his stride purposeful but measured to avoid jostling her unnecessarily. The main street of Camp Verde fell away behind them as Cole turned onto a dusty trail that led into the surrounding countryside. The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly as they left the shelter of the town's buildings. Bridget could feel sweat beading on her forehead, partly from the heat and partly from the pain that seemed to intensify with each step Cole took. She tried to focus on anything else, and found herself studying her rescuer's face. Cole Donovan had the weathered look of a man who spent most of his time outdoors. His jaw was strong and covered with a day's growth of stubble. Lines around his eyes spoke of squinting into the sun, but there was something kind in those eyes, something trustworthy. How long? In Camp Verde, Bridget managed to ask, needing conversation to distract her from the pain. Born and raised here, Cole replied, seeming to understand her need for distraction. My father was one of the first settlers after the fort was established. He ran cattle on the land north of town. I took over the ranch when he passed 5 years ago. I just arrived, Bridget said, her voice barely audible. 3 days. From where? Cole asked, adjusting his hold on her slightly as they began to ascend a gentle slope. Philadelphia, she whispered, came to teach. A look of recognition crossed Cole's face. You're the new schoolteacher the town council hired. We've been waiting for you to arrive. Bridget tried to smile, but it turned into a grimace of pain. Not very good first impression. I'd say surviving a gunfight and a fall down that ravine makes for quite an impressive first impression, Miss Ellis. The trail narrowed as they entered a stretch of mesquite and juniper. Cole navigated the path with confidence, clearly familiar with every rock and turn. Despite his careful movements, each step sent jolts of pain through Bridget's body, and she found herself drifting in and out of consciousness. Stay with me, Miss Ellis, Cole urged whenever he felt her go limp in his arms. Tell me about Philadelphia. Why'd you leave to come all the way out here? Through waves of pain, Bridget tried to focus on his questions. Wanted, adventure, she gasped. Independence. Well, you've certainly found adventure, Cole commented dryly, though perhaps more than you bargained for. As they continued along the trail, the sun climbed higher in the sky. The heat became oppressive, and Bridget could see sweat trickling down Cole's face. His breathing grew heavier, but his arms remained steady, his grip on her secure. Not too heavy, she asked during a moment of clarity. A ghost of a smile touched Cole's lips. I've carried calves heavier than you, Miss Ellis. Save your breath. They passed a small stream where Cole paused briefly to dampen his bandana in the cool water. With gentle care, he wiped Bridget's face and then his own before continuing their journey. Almost halfway there, he told her, his voice betraying no hint of fatigue despite having carried her for over a mile. The landscape began to change subtly. The flat, dusty terrain gave way to more vegetation, prickly pear cactus, ocotillo with its slender, spiny branches, and the occasional palavered tree with its green bark and delicate yellow flowers. A wave of dizziness washed over Bridget, and she closed her eyes against it, unconsciously gripping Cole's shirt with one hand. Tell me about your ranch, she whispered, desperate for something to focus on besides the pain. The Triple D, Cole's voice took on a warmer tone. It's good land, as good as you'll find in this territory. We run about 500 head of cattle, mostly Herefords. Got a nice stretch of the Verde River running through the northern section. Good water's worth more than gold out here. Triple D, Bridget questioned weakly. Donovan's Diamond Desert, he explained. My father had grand visions when he named it, said this land would yield riches if we treated it right. Has it? Cole was quiet for a moment. In ways that matter, he finally said. It's not made us rich with money, but there's a richness to the life. Freedom, space to breathe. The irony of his words wasn't lost on Bridget, who was struggling for each breath. A small, painful laugh escaped her, followed immediately by a gasp of agony. Easy now, Cole murmured, concern deepening the lines around his eyes. We're making good time. Doc Wilkins will fix you up. They fell silent as Cole navigated a particularly rough stretch of trail. The sun was directly overhead now, and there was little shade to offer respite from the heat. Bridget could feel herself slipping in and out of consciousness more frequently, the pain in her ribs a constant, throbbing presence. Stay with me, Miss Ellis. Cole's voice seemed to come from far away. Just a little farther now. Bridget forced her eyes open, trying to focus on Cole's face above her. Thank you, she whispered. Most men wouldn't. Most men haven't been raised proper, Cole replied simply. My mother would have my hide if I left a lady in distress. Despite the pain, Bridget felt a flicker of amusement. Your mother sounds formidable. She was, Cole said softly. Lost her to fever 3 winters ago. I'm sorry, Bridget managed. Cole nodded but didn't speak. They continued in silence for a time. The only sounds the crunch of Cole's boots on the dusty trail and the distant call of birds. The trail began to descend into a small valley, where a modest cabin stood among a cluster of cottonwood trees. A thin spiral of smoke rose from the chimney, and a small corral to one side held a single horse. Doc Wilkins' place, Cole announced, relief evident in his voice. We made it, Miss Ellis. Bridget tried to respond, but the world was growing dark around the edges. The last thing she was aware of was Cole's pace quickening as they approached the cabin, and his voice calling out for the doctor. When Bridget next opened her eyes, she was lying on a narrow bed in a simply furnished room. The window beside the bed showed that the sun was lower in the sky. Several hours must have passed. Each breath still brought pain, but it was duller now, muted somehow. Welcome back, a gruff voice said from nearby. Bridget turned her head carefully to see an elderly man with spectacles perched on his nose and a shock of white hair watching her from a chair beside the bed. Dr. Wilkins, she guessed. The man nodded. The very same. And you'd be the new school teacher who decided to take a tumble down the ravine on her first week in town. Not exactly. My plan, Bridget replied, finding that talking was still painful but manageable. I should say not. The doctor stood and approached the bed, his movements sprightly despite his apparent age. You've got 3 broken ribs, a fair number of cuts and bruises, and what I suspect is a mild concussion. You're a lucky young woman, could have been much worse. It feels quite bad enough, Bridget admitted. Dr. Wilkins chuckled. I don't doubt it. I've bound your ribs tight to help them heal and given you something for the pain. You'll need to rest easy for several weeks. No exertion, no lifting, and certainly no more falling down ravines. The school, Bridget started to protest. We'll wait, the doctor said firmly. Town council's been waiting 6 months for a teacher. They can wait another few weeks to make sure you're properly healed. A soft knock on the door interrupted them. The doctor called for the visitor to enter, and Cole Donovan stepped into the room, removing his hat as he did so. He'd clearly taken the time to wash up. His face was clean, his hair damp, and he'd changed into a fresh shirt. Miss Ellis, he said, relief evident in his expression when he saw her awake. Good to see you with your eyes open. Mr. Donovan, Bridget replied, surprised by the flutter in her stomach that had nothing to do with her injuries. I owe you my life. Cole shook his head. You owe me nothing. Anyone would have done the same. No, Dr. Wilkins contradicted, they wouldn't have. 4 miles carrying a grown woman in this heat, most men would have looked for an easier solution. Cole looked uncomfortable with the praise. How is she, Doc? She'll live, Dr. Wilkins replied. Though she's going to be in considerable pain for a while, those ribs need time to mend. How long will she need to stay here? Cole asked. The doctor scratched his chin thoughtfully. That's a problem. I've got to ride to Prescott tomorrow. Army captain's wife is expecting their first child any day now, and there are complications. I could be gone a week or more. She can't stay alone, Cole protested. No, she can't, the doctor agreed. And the town's no place for her right now. What with those rustlers still on the loose, and the sheriff organizing a posse to go after the one that escaped. Bridget listened to this exchange with growing alarm. She had no friends in Camp Verde, no connections except for the town council that had hired her, and they were all men with their own families and concerns. Cole seemed to come to a decision. She'll come to the Triple D. My housekeeper, Mrs. Hathaway, can look after her. We've got plenty of room and it's quiet there, good place to recover. Now hold on, Bridget tried to protest, but the effort sent a stab of pain through her chest. It's a sensible solution, Doctor, Wilkins said, seemingly untroubled by the impropriety of a single woman staying at a bachelor's ranch. Cole's place is well ordered, and Mrs. Hathaway is as respectable a widow as you'll find in the territory. No one will think twice about it. I couldn't impose, Bridget began. It's not an imposition, Cole insisted. It's the right thing to do, unless you'd prefer to stay in town at the hotel. The thought of being alone in a hotel room, unable to care for herself properly, was unappealing. Still, Bridget hesitated. We've only just met, Mr. Donovan. A hint of a smile touched Cole's lips. Well, I reckon carrying a person 4 miles in the Arizona heat counts for something in the way of an introduction. Despite herself, Bridget felt an answering smile tug at her own lips. I suppose it does at that. Then it's settled, Dr. Wilkins declared. Cole, can you come back with a wagon tomorrow morning? I'll make sure she's ready to travel by then. Cole nodded. I'll bring the spring wagon with a mattress in the back to make it as comfortable as possible. Good man, the doctor approved. Now I've got to see to preparing for my journey. You can sit with Miss Ellis for a spell if you like, but don't tire her out. After the doctor left the room, a slightly awkward silence fell between Bridget and Cole. He remained standing near the door, his hat in his hands, as if uncertain of his welcome now that she was conscious and they were alone. Please sit, Bridget invited, gesturing weakly to the chair the doctor had vacated. Cole moved to the chair and sat, placing his hat on his knee. How are you feeling? Truly, like I've been kicked by a mule, Bridget admitted. But I'm alive thanks to you. Cole shook his head. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. You could have left me for someone else to find. No, Cole said simply. I couldn't have. Something in his tone made Bridget study him more carefully. Despite his rugged appearance, there was a gentleness about Cole Donovan that intrigued her. She'd met plenty of men in Philadelphia, educated men in fine suits with polished manners, but none had impressed her the way this Arizona rancher had in the span of a few hours. Tell me more about your ranch, she requested, genuinely interested and also wanting to keep him talking. Cole seemed to relax slightly. It's about 10 miles north of town. Good grazing land with reliable water. The house isn't fancy, but it's solid. My father built it with his own hands when he first staked his claim. Added on to it over the years as the family grew, though it's just me living there now, along with Mrs. Hathaway and a couple of ranch hands who bunk in the bunkhouse. No family of your own? Bridget asked, then immediately felt forward for asking such a personal question. If Cole was offended, he didn't show it. "Never found the time," he said with a slight shrug. "Building the ranch into something that would make my father proud has been my focus." "And has it made him proud, I mean?" A thoughtful expression crossed Cole's face. "I hope so. We've weathered droughts, rustlers, and market crashes. The Triple D is still standing, still producing. That counts for something in these parts." "It counts for a great deal, I'd think," Bridget said softly. Cole's blue eyes met hers, and something passed between them, an understanding, perhaps, or a recognition. Whatever it was, it made Bridget's heart beat a little faster, which in turn reminded her painfully of her broken ribs. She couldn't quite suppress a wince, and Cole immediately stood. "I'm tiring you, you should rest." "No, please," Bridget protested. "I've been unconscious for hours. I'd rather have company." Cole hesitated, then sat back down. "Tell me about Philadelphia, then. What made you leave such a civilized place for our dusty corner of the territory?" Bridget considered the question. "I suppose I was seeking something I couldn't find there. My parents died when I was 16. Influenza took them both within days of each other. I went to live with my aunt, who was kind enough but had very fixed ideas about what a young lady should be and do. Which didn't include coming west to teach in a frontier town," Cole guessed. "Precisely," Bridget confirmed. "She wanted me to marry a suitable gentleman, preferably one with a good income and social connections, and settle into a respectable life of household management and social calls." "And that didn't appeal to you?" Bridget sighed, wincing as the movement jarred her ribs. "It wasn't that I was opposed to marriage or a family of my own someday, but I wanted to experience more of life first, to be useful in a way that mattered. I trained as a teacher and taught at a charity school in Philadelphia for 2 years, but when I saw the advertisement for a teacher in Arizona Territory, something about it called to me." "That took courage," Cole observed. "Many women wouldn't have made such a journey alone." "Or foolishness," Bridget countered with a small smile. "Considering I've been in Camp Verde less than a week and am already bedridden with broken ribs." Cole's answering smile was warm. "I prefer to think of it as courage and determination, both qualities that serve well out here." Their conversation was interrupted by the return of Dr. Wilkins, who declared that his patient needed rest and shooed Cole from the room with promises to have Bridget ready to travel by 9 the following morning. That night, despite the pain in her ribs and the strangeness of her surroundings, Bridget slept better than she had in months. Perhaps it was the doctor's medicine, or perhaps it was the knowledge that tomorrow she would be going to the Triple D, where Cole Donovan would be. The thought should have alarmed her after all. She barely knew the man, but instead, it brought an unexpected comfort. True to his word, Cole arrived the next morning with a wagon specially prepared for Bridget's comfort. A mattress had been secured in the bed of the wagon, covered with clean linens and several pillows. A canvas had been rigged above to provide shade from the sun. Mrs. Hathaway insisted on the full treatment, Cole explained as Dr. Wilkins helped Bridget from the cabin. "Said if I was bringing home an injured lady, I'd better make sure she traveled in comfort." The process of getting Bridget settled in the wagon was painful, but managed with care. Dr. Wilkins had bound her ribs again that morning and given her another dose of medicine for the pain. He'd also provided Cole with detailed instructions for her care and a supply of herbs and tinctures to help with her recovery. "Mind you keep those ribs bound tight," the doctor instructed as he prepared to depart for Prescott. "No exertion for at least 2 weeks, and even then, take it slow. Broken ribs can puncture a lung if you're not careful." Bridget promised to follow his instructions to the letter, though she privately wondered how she would manage without becoming a complete burden to Cole and his housekeeper. As if reading her thoughts, Cole spoke up as he climbed onto the wagon seat. Don't worry about being a bother at the ranch, Miss Ellis. Mrs. Hathaway is beside herself with excitement at having another woman to talk to. She's been the only female at the Triple D since my mother passed. Still, I hate to impose, Bridget said as Cole carefully turned the wagon onto the trail that would take them north to his ranch. It's no imposition, Cole assured her. Besides, I've grown tired of Mrs. Hathaway fussing solely over me. Now she'll have you to coddle, and I might get a moment's peace. The teasing note in his voice made Bridget smile despite her discomfort. The wagon's movement sent occasional jolts of pain through her ribs, but Cole drove with remarkable care, slowing to a near crawl over the rougher sections of the trail. The journey took most of the morning. As they traveled, Cole pointed out landmarks and features of the land, telling Bridget the history of the area with the ease of someone who had grown up immersed in its stories. He spoke of the Apache who had first inhabited these lands, the Spanish explorers who had passed through, and the American settlers who had established Camp Verde and the surrounding ranches. My father was among the first civilians to settle here after the Army established Fort Verde, Cole explained. He'd fought in the war between the states and wanted a fresh start somewhere far from the memories of battlefields. Did he find peace here? Bridget asked. Cole was quiet for a moment, his gaze scanning the horizon. I think so. The land asks much of a man, but it gives back in its own way. There's an honesty to life out here that he valued. By midday, they crested a low rise and Cole drew the wagon to a halt. There it is, he said with unmistakable pride. The Triple D. Bridget pushed herself up slightly on her elbows, ignoring the protest from her ribs to get a better view. Below them stretched a broad valley, green with spring growth. A creek wound through it, lined with cottonwoods that stood out vividly against the more muted colors of the surrounding landscape. Near the center of the valley stood a large, rambling ranch house built of timber and native stone, with several outbuildings clustered nearby. In the distance, Bridget could see cattle grazing on the hillsides. It's beautiful, she said, and meant it. After the dusty streets of Camp Verde, the Triple D looked like an oasis. It's home, Cole replied simply, but the warmth in his voice conveyed what the ranch meant to him more than any elaborate description could have done. As they approached the ranch house, a plump, gray-haired woman emerged onto the porch, shading her eyes against the midday sun. When she spotted the wagon, she hurried down the steps with surprising agility for a woman of her apparent years. There's Mrs. Hathaway, Cole said with affection. Prepare yourself for a barrage of questions and concerns. She's been cooking since dawn, convinced you'd arrive at death's door needing to be fattened up. The wagon had barely come to a stop before Mrs. Hathaway was beside it, her face a picture of maternal concern as she took in Bridget's pale countenance. You poor dear, she exclaimed. Cole Donovan, why didn't you tell me she was so young and pretty? I'd have had the blue room prepared instead of the yellow one. It gets better morning light for an invalid. The yellow room will be fine, Mrs. Hathaway, Cole assured her with the patience of someone long accustomed to the housekeeper's fussing. Let's get Miss Ellis inside and settled before we worry about which room has the better light. With the efficiency of a military campaign, Mrs. Hathaway directed Cole and one of the ranch hands who had appeared from the barn in carrying Bridget into the house and up the stairs to the promised yellow room. It was a cheerful space, with walls painted a soft buttercup color and white lace curtains at the windows. A large brass bed dominated the room, already turned down and waiting with plump pillows and fresh linens. Once Bridget was settled in bed, Mrs. Hathaway shooed the men from the room and helped her change from her travel-worn clothes into a borrowed nightgown. Cole told me about your accident, the housekeeper said as she carefully helped Bridget navigate the painful process of changing clothes with broken ribs. "Such a dreadful welcome to our little corner of the territory. But you're safe now, and we'll have you right as rain in no time." Bridget found herself warming immediately to the older woman's motherly manner. "You're very kind, Mrs. Hathaway. I don't know how to thank you for opening your home to a stranger." "Pish!" The housekeeper dismissed the thanks with a wave of her hand. "Any friend of Cole's is welcome here, and besides, it's a blessing to have another woman in the house. These men, they mean well, but they haven't the first idea about what a lady needs for comfort." Once Bridget was settled comfortably in bed, Mrs. Hathaway insisted on bringing her a tray with soup, fresh bread, and tea. The food was simple but delicious, and Bridget realized she hadn't eaten a proper meal since before her accident the previous day. "Cole tells me you're to be our new schoolteacher, Mrs. Hathaway said as she bustled about the room, arranging Bridget's few belongings that Cole had retrieved from her lodgings in town. "Yes, though I'm afraid my teaching career in Camp Verde is off to a rather inauspicious start," Bridget replied ruefully. "Nonsense," the housekeeper declared. "The children can wait a few more weeks. Most of them are helping with spring planting anyway. By the time they're free for schooling, you'll be well enough to commence." After ensuring Bridget had everything she might need, Mrs. Hathaway left her to rest, promising to check on her regularly. Exhausted from the journey and still affected by the doctor's medicine, Bridget quickly drifted off to sleep, lulled by the unfamiliar but comforting sounds of the ranch, distant lowing of cattle, the creak of the windmill, and the occasional whinny of horses from the corral. She woke to evening shadows stretching across the yellow walls of her room and the sound of a gentle knock at the door. When she called for the visitor to enter, it was Cole who stepped into the room, carrying another tray of food. "Mrs. Hathaway sent this up," he explained, setting the tray on the bedside table. "She's convinced that food is the cure for all ailments." Bridget smiled, pushing herself carefully into a more upright position. "She's been very kind." "She's a good woman," Cole agreed, remaining standing near the door as if uncertain of his welcome. "How are you feeling?" "Better, I think," Bridget said, though in truth, the pain in her ribs was a constant presence. "The medicine Dr. Wilkins gave me helps." Cole nodded, his expression serious. "You gave us quite a scare yesterday." "I'm sorry for the trouble," Bridget began, but Cole held up a hand to stop her. "No apologies necessary. I'm just glad I was there to help." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only when Cole cleared his throat and said, "I should let you eat while it's hot. Mrs. Hathaway will have my hide if I let her cooking go cold." Would you mind staying?" Bridget asked, surprising herself with the request. "I've slept most of the day away, and I find I'm craving conversation." Cole hesitated only briefly before nodding and taking a seat in the chair beside the bed. As Bridget ate the hearty stew and cornbread Mrs. Hathaway had prepared, they talked easily about a variety of subjects: life in Philadelphia versus Arizona territory, books they had both read, the plans for the school in Camp Verde. "The schoolhouse still needs some work," Cole admitted. "The roof leaks in one corner and the desks are a bit rough. I'd intended to help with the repairs before you arrived, but the spring calving kept me busier than expected at the ranch." "I'm sure it will be fine," Bridget assured him. "I didn't come west expecting luxuries." "Still, children deserve a proper place to learn," Cole said. "Once you're recovered, I'll make sure the building is ready for you." The genuine concern in his voice touched Bridget. In the short time she had known Cole Donovan, she had seen repeatedly that, beneath his rugged exterior, beat a kind and considerate heart. Their conversation continued until Mrs. Hathaway appeared at the door to announce that it was time for Bridget's medicine and rest. Cole bid her good night with a promise to check on her the following day. The next 2 weeks fell into a gentle rhythm. Each morning, Mrs. Hathaway would help Bridget with her toilet and bring her breakfast. By the end of the first week, Bridget was able to sit in a chair by the window for short periods, watching the activities of the ranch below. Cole would often stop by in the evenings after his day's work was done, sometimes bringing a book to read aloud or simply sitting and talking with her about his day. Bridget found herself looking forward to these evening visits with an eagerness that both surprised and alarmed her. She was developing feelings for Cole Donovan that went beyond simple gratitude or friendship, and she wasn't entirely sure what to do about it. By the beginning of the 3rd week, Bridget was strong enough to venture downstairs with assistance, taking her meals in the dining room with Cole and Mrs. Hathaway. The pain in her ribs had subsided to a dull ache, flaring only when she moved too quickly or took too deep a breath. "Doc Wilkins will be back from Prescott any day now," Cole mentioned over dinner one evening. "I sent word to town for him to come check on you when he returns." "I feel much better," Bridget assured him, "thanks to your care and Mrs. Hathaway's excellent nursing." The housekeeper beamed at the compliment. "It's been a pleasure having another woman in the house. This place has been too full of men and their muddy boots for too long." Cole raised an eyebrow in mock offense. "And here I thought you enjoyed our masculine company, Mrs. H." "HMPH," the housekeeper snorted, but her eyes twinkled with affection. "A house needs a woman's touch to be a proper home, and that's a fact." An awkward silence followed this pronouncement, with both Bridget and Cole suddenly finding their plates extremely interesting. Mrs. Hathaway looked between them with knowing eyes but said nothing more on the subject. The following afternoon, Bridget was sitting on the front porch of the ranch house, enjoying the spring sunshine, when she spotted a rider approaching. As he drew closer, she recognized Dr. Wilkins on his bay gelding. Cole emerged from the barn when the doctor arrived, wiping his hands on a rag as he came to greet the visitor. "Good to see you back, Doc," Cole called. "How was Prescott?" "Hot, dusty, and full of politicians," the doctor replied as he dismounted. "But the captain's wife delivered a healthy boy, so the journey was worthwhile." His eyes fell on Bridget. "And how's our patient? Looking considerably better than when I left, I see." Under the doctor's professional examination, Bridget's ribs were declared to be healing nicely. "You'll need to be careful for another few weeks," he advised, "but I believe you could return to town and begin light duties soon if you wish." The thought of leaving the Triple D brought an unexpected pang to Bridget's heart. In the weeks she had spent there, the ranch had begun to feel like home in a way no place had since her parents' house in Philadelphia. "The school board is eager to have you start," Dr. Wilkins continued. "They've completed the repairs on the schoolhouse and gathered about 20 children ready for learning. I could take you into town tomorrow if you'd like," Cole offered, his expression carefully neutral, "or whenever you feel ready." Bridget hesitated, torn between her duty to the children waiting for their teacher and her reluctance to leave the Triple D and Cole. "Perhaps a few more days of recovery would be wise," she finally said. "If that wouldn't be an imposition." "No imposition at all," Cole replied, and Bridget thought she detected relief in his voice. After the doctor departed with promises to check on her again the following week, Bridget and Cole sat together on the porch, watching the sunset paint the western sky in brilliant oranges and purples. "You don't have to leave, you know," Cole said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence between them. "Not if you don't want to." Bridget turned to look at him, uncertain of his meaning. "I have obligations to the school, I know," Cole interrupted. "I meant, after the school term. Or even during. Camp Verde isn't so far that you couldn't ride in each day, or most days at least. Bridget's heart began to beat faster, and for once it had nothing to do with her injured ribs. "Are you asking me to stay here, at the Triple D?" Cole turned to face her fully, his blue eyes serious. "I'm not explaining myself well. What I'm trying to say, Miss Ellis Bridget, is that these past weeks with you here have been the happiest I can remember in a long time. I know it's forward of me and perhaps too soon, but I find myself dreading the thought of you leaving." "Oh," Bridget breathed, her mind racing to catch up with what seemed to be happening. Cole ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of nervousness she had come to recognize. "I understand if you don't feel the same. You barely know me, and your life here is just beginning. You probably have plans that don't include a dusty cattle rancher." "Cole," Bridget interrupted gently, "I've come to care for you too." The hope that blossomed on his face made her heart swell. "You have?" Bridget nodded, a smile spreading across her face. "Very much so. I've never met anyone like you. You're kind and brave and thoughtful. You carried me 4 miles to a doctor when most men would have left me for someone else to find. You opened your home to me when I was a stranger." "How could I not care for you?" Cole reached out slowly, giving her time to withdraw if she wished, and took her hand in his. "I know it's too soon to speak of more, but I'd like the chance to court you properly if you'd permit it." "I'd like that very much," Bridget replied, her voice soft but certain. The weeks that followed were some of the happiest of Bridget's life. She returned to Camp Verde and began her duties as the town's schoolteacher, but 3 evenings a week. Cole would arrive at the small house the town had provided for her, sometimes bringing flowers or a book he thought she might enjoy, other times simply offering his company for a walk through town or a quiet dinner. The townsfolk quickly grew accustomed to seeing them together, and if there was gossip about the rancher and the schoolteacher, it was good-natured and approving. Cole Donovan was well respected in Camp Verde, and Bridget had quickly earned the town's affection with her dedication to their children's education. As spring gave way to summer, Bridget's ribs healed completely, leaving only the memory of pain and the life-changing meeting it had precipitated. She spent weekends at the Triple D, helping Mrs. Hathaway with household tasks and learning about ranch life from Cole. They rode together across the vast expanse of the Triple D, Cole teaching her to recognize landmarks and read the signs of weather and wildlife. One evening in late summer, Cole took Bridget to a special spot on the ranch, a small mesa overlooking the valley, where wildflowers grew in profusion, and the sunset view was spectacular. They had brought a picnic, and as they finished the simple meal of cold chicken, bread, and apple pie that Mrs. Hathaway had packed for them, Cole grew unusually quiet. "Is everything all right?" Bridget asked, concerned by his sudden solemnity. Cole nodded, then reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. "Bridget Ellis, these past months have been the happiest of my life. I know it hasn't been long, but I've never been more certain of anything than I am of my feelings for you." He opened the box to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a small but perfect diamond. "This was my mother's. My father gave it to her when they decided to stake their claim here. It's not fancy like the jewelry you might have had in Philadelphia, but it comes with a promise of love and a life built together." Tears welled in Bridget's eyes as Cole continued, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his face. "I love you, Bridget. I think I began to fall in love with you that first day, carrying you to Doc Wilkins' place. I know the Triple D isn't Philadelphia, and the life of a rancher's wife isn't easy, but if you'll have me, I promise to love you and cherish you for all our days." "Cole," Bridget whispered, her heart so full she could barely speak. "I love you too. From those first days when you cared for me so tenderly, I think my heart was already yours." She held out her hand and Cole slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit as if it had been made for her. "Is that a yes?" Cole asked, a smile beginning to spread across his face. "Yes," Bridget laughed through happy tears. "Absolutely yes." Cole gathered her into his arms, kissing her with a tenderness that made her heart soar. When they finally broke apart, they sat with their foreheads touching, both smiling with the joy of their shared future. "Mrs. Hathaway will be beside herself with excitement," Cole said with a chuckle. "She's been leaving bridal magazines around the house for weeks. Has she now?" Bridget laughed. "And here I thought we were being subtle about our feelings." "About as subtle as a stampede," Cole admitted. "Half the town has been placing bets on when I'd get around to proposing." The news of their engagement spread quickly through Camp Verde. The school board was initially concerned about losing their teacher, but Bridget assured them she intended to continue teaching, at least until children of her own might someday require her full attention. They were married in October, when the cottonwoods along the Verde River had turned to gold, and the air held the first hint of autumn crispness. The ceremony was held at the Triple D, with the entire population of Camp Verde in attendance. Bridget wore a simple white gown that Mrs. Hathaway had helped her make, with sprigs of sage and wildflowers in her hair. Dr. Wilkins gave the bride away, joking that since he'd helped put her back together, he had earned the right. The town's minister performed the ceremony on the front porch of the ranch house, with the backdrop of the land that Cole loved so dearly. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the minister declared, and when Cole kissed his bride, the cheers of their friends and neighbors echoed across the valley. The celebration lasted well into the night, with music and dancing and enough food to feed twice the number of guests. When the last visitor had departed, Cole swept Bridget into his arms much more gently than the first time he had carried her, and took her across the threshold of the home they would now share. Later, as they lay in the quiet darkness of their bedroom, Bridget rested her head on Cole's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Happy?" Cole asked, his fingers gently stroking her hair. "Completely," Bridget assured him. "I came west seeking adventure and independence. I never imagined I would find love as well. When I carried you to Doc Wilkins that day, I had no idea I was carrying my future wife," Cole said with a smile in his voice. "Funny how life works out. I'm grateful for those broken ribs," Bridget murmured sleepily. "Without them, we might never have met." "Oh, I think we would have," Cole disagreed. "Some things are meant to be, broken ribs or no." As the months passed, Bridget and Cole settled into married life with a happiness that seemed to grow with each passing day. Bridget continued to teach at the Camp Verde school, riding in each morning on a gentle mare Cole had given her as a wedding present. In the evenings, she would return to the Triple D, where Cole would often meet her partway to ride home together. The ranch prospered under their joint care. Bridget proved to have a keen head for figures and helped Cole modernize the ranch's bookkeeping. They discussed each major decision together, from which bulls to purchase for breeding to whether to expand their grazing lands to the east. Mrs. Hathaway remained a beloved fixture in their household, though she threatened at least once a month to retire and leave you young folks to your privacy. Neither Bridget nor Cole would hear of it, and the housekeeper always relented, secretly pleased to be so valued. Their first anniversary was marked by two significant events. The first was the completion of an extension to the schoolhouse in Camp Verde, which now boasted a proper library filled with books that Cole had ordered from catalogs in Chicago and San Francisco. The second was the news that Bridget was expecting their first child. The pregnancy was not without its challenges. The summer heat was oppressive, and Dr. Wilkins insisted that Bridget reduce her teaching schedule as her time grew near. Cole was attentive to the point of hovering, which alternately touched and exasperated Bridget. "I'm not made of porcelain, Cole Donovan," she told him one evening when he tried to prevent her from carrying a basket of freshly folded laundry upstairs. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time." "Not my wife and not my child," Cole replied, gently but firmly taking the basket from her hands. "Humor me, please." Bridget sighed but surrendered the basket, secretly touched by his concern. Their son, James Michael Donovan, was born on a clear September morning in 1880, with Dr. Wilkins attending and Mrs. Hathaway assisting. The labor was long but uncomplicated, and when Cole was finally allowed into the bedroom to see his wife and newborn son, the expression of wonder and love on his face was something Bridget knew she would remember all her days. "He's perfect," Cole whispered, carefully cradling the tiny bundle in his large, work-roughened hands. "Absolutely perfect." Life at the Triple D adjusted to accommodate its newest resident. James, or Jamie, as he was quickly nicknamed, proved to be a good-natured baby with his father's blue eyes and a tuft of his mother's dark hair. Bridget took a temporary leave from teaching, though she often brought Jamie to school with her for short visits, much to the delight of her students. As Jamie grew from infant to toddler, the Triple D continued to prosper. Cole's innovative breeding program produced cattle that were particularly well-suited to the Arizona climate, and ranchers from as far away as Texas came to purchase breeding stock from the Triple D. Bridget returned to teaching part-time when Jamie was 18 months old, with Mrs. Hathaway happily assuming grandmother duties during school hours. The arrangement worked well for all concerned, especially when Bridget discovered she was expecting their second child. "Are you hoping for a girl this time?" Bridget asked Cole one evening as they sat on the porch, watching 3-year-old Jamie playing with wooden blocks on a quilt spread nearby. Cole considered the question. "I'll be happy with either, so long as the baby is healthy and you come through the birth safely," he said finally. "Though I suppose a daughter with your beauty and intelligence would be a special blessing." Bridget smiled, leaning against his shoulder. "And your kindness and integrity, I hope." Their daughter, Elizabeth Ann Donovan, arrived in the spring of 1884, a delicate but robust baby with a lusty cry that belied her small size. Jamie approached his role as big brother with solemn responsibility, bringing his favorite toys to show the baby and patting her tiny hand with gentle curiosity. 2 children in less than 5 years of marriage, Mrs. Hathaway commented with satisfaction as she helped Bridget settle the newborn in her cradle. "This house is filling up nicely." "Don't get too comfortable with just 2, Bridget replied with a smile. "Cole comes from a family of 5 children, and I always wished for siblings growing up." Mrs. Hathaway's eyes twinkled. "The more the merrier, I always say. This house was built for a large family." The years that followed were busy ones for the Donovan family. The Triple D expanded its operations to include a small horse breeding program specializing in quarter horses for ranch work. Bridget's school grew to require 2 teachers, with Bridget serving as head teacher and taking on the older students. Jamie and Elizabeth, or Lizzie, as she was called, were joined by a brother, Thomas, in 1886, and another sister, Grace, in 1889. The Donovan children were a common sight in Camp Verde, accompanying their parents to town for supplies or church on Sundays. "You've built yourself quite a dynasty, Cole Donovan," Dr. Wilkins commented one day as he treated Thomas for a minor case of croup. The doctor was older now, his hair completely white and his movements slower, but his mind remained sharp. Cole looked around the comfortable living room of the ranch house, where Bridget sat reading to Lizzie while Jamie practiced his letters and baby Grace slept peacefully in a cradle nearby. "I've been blessed beyond measure," he agreed quietly. As the children grew, the rhythm of life at the Triple D evolved. Jamie showed an early aptitude for ranch work, following Cole around from the time he could walk and soaking up knowledge about cattle, horses, and land management. Lizzie was more academic, devouring books from her mother's library and displaying a talent for mathematics that rivaled Bridget's. Thomas was the family musician, teaching himself to play the piano that Cole had ordered from St. Louis as a surprise for Bridget's 30th birthday. Grace, the baby of the family, was a sweet-natured child with a gift for making friends with every person and animal she encountered. In 1896, as Jamie prepared to leave for college in California, the first Donovan to pursue higher education, Bridget and Cole celebrated their 18th wedding anniversary with a trip to San Francisco. It was Bridget's first journey back to a major city since her arrival in Arizona Territory, and while she enjoyed the theaters, restaurants, and shops, she found herself longing for the open spaces of the Triple D after just a week away. "Ready to go home?" Cole asked, noting her wistful gaze as they sat in their hotel dining room on their last evening in the city. "Yes," Bridget admitted without hesitation. "The city is wonderful to visit, but the Triple D is where I belong now." Cole reached across the table to take her hand, his touch still sending a flutter through her heart after all their years together. "Do you ever regret it, leaving civilization for our dusty corner of the world?" Bridget shook her head emphatically. "Never, not for a single moment. Everything I love is there, you, our children, the life we've built together. How could I regret that?" The journey back to Arizona seemed to take forever, both of them eager to return to their family and home. When the stagecoach finally crested the rise that offered the first view of the Triple D, Bridget felt the same surge of emotion she had experienced that first day, when Cole had shown her the ranch from this very spot. The ranch house had grown over the years, with additions to accommodate their expanding family and improvements that reflected their prosperity. The windmill that had creaked so persistently in Bridget's memory of her first days at the Triple D had been replaced by a newer, more efficient model. The corral now held not just horses, but the prize bulls that had made the Triple D famous throughout the territory. Fields that had once been open range had been fenced and cultivated with alfalfa to supplement the cattle's diet during the winter months. Yet for all the changes, the essential character of the place remained the same, a haven of peace and beauty in the Arizona wilderness, and the heart of the life Cole and Bridget had created together. As the coach pulled up to the ranch house, their 3 younger children burst through the door, followed more sedately by Mrs. Hathaway, who at 78 still ruled the household with a firm but loving hand. "Mama, Papa." Grace, now 7, was the first to reach them, throwing herself into Cole's arms as he stepped down from the coach. Lizzie and Thomas followed close behind, their excitement at having their parents home evident in their faces. That evening, as the family gathered around the dinner table sharing news and stories, Bridget looked around at the faces she loved most in the world and felt a profound sense of gratitude. From the moment Cole had carried her, broken and breathless, to Dr. Wilkins' cabin, her life had taken a turn she could never have predicted, but would never regret. Later, when the children had gone to bed and the house was quiet, Bridget and Cole sat together on the porch swing, a habit they had maintained throughout their marriage. The night was clear, the stars brilliant in the Arizona sky. 18 years, Cole mused, his arm around Bridget's shoulders. Sometimes it seems like only yesterday that I found you at the bottom of that ravine. And sometimes it feels like I've always been here with you, Bridget replied, leaning into his embrace. As if my life before the Triple D was just a prelude to the real story. Cole pressed a kiss to her temple. Thank you for saying yes to a dusty cowboy with a ranch in the middle of nowhere. Bridget turned her face up to his, her eyes shining in the moonlight. Thank you for carrying me when I couldn't walk on my own, in more ways than one. As their lips met in a kiss that still held all the tenderness and passion of their first, Bridget silently blessed the broken ribs that had led her to this man, this family, this life. Some might call it chance or accident that had brought them together that fateful day in Camp Verde. Bridget preferred to think of it as destiny. The years continued to pass, bringing changes both expected and surprising. Jamie returned from college with a degree in agriculture and innovative ideas for the ranch. Lizzie followed her brother to university, returning with a teaching certificate and eventually taking over as head teacher at the Camp Verde school when Bridget decided to retire. Thomas's musical talents led him to a brief career with a traveling show before he too returned to the Triple D, bringing with him a wife he had met during his travels. Grace, to everyone's surprise, developed an interest in medicine after assisting Dr. Wilkins with a difficult delivery at a neighboring ranch, and with her parents' blessing, she departed for medical school in Denver. Through it all, Cole and Bridget remained the steady center of the family, their love deepening with each passing year. They welcomed grandchildren, mourned the passing of dear friends like Mrs. Hathaway and Dr. Wilkins, and witnessed the territory of Arizona achieve statehood in 1912. In the spring of 1928, as they celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren, Cole and Bridget stood once more on the mesa where he had proposed half a century earlier. If I had known on that day when I carried you to the doctor that we would have all this, Cole said, gesturing to the prosperous ranch below them, and the family gathered at the house for the celebration. I would never have believed it possible. Bridget, her dark hair now streaked with silver but her eyes as bright as ever, smiled up at her husband. I think perhaps a part of you did know. You told me once that some things are meant to be. Cole's answering smile was tender as he took her hand, the same hand that had worn his mother's ring for 50 years. The best decision I ever made was running down that ravine to help a fallen stranger. And the best thing that ever happened to me was breaking my ribs, Bridget replied with a soft laugh. Who would have thought? As they made their way slowly back to the house where their family waited, Cole and Bridget walked hand in hand, just as they had traveled through life together, supporting each other, loving each other, building something beautiful and enduring from what had begun in pain and uncertainty. The broken ribs had long since healed, leaving no trace except in memory. But the love that had been born in those first difficult days had only grown stronger with the passage of time. A love as vast and enduring as the Arizona sky above them, as solid and true as the land beneath their feet, a love that had carried them through a lifetime together at the Triple D.